What's up guys, Hangy from Esperino, and I'm back with the second part to my GameCube recent pickup. As I said in my last recent pickup video, there was far too many GameCube titles to feature in the one video, so here's the second part of everything else that I managed to pick up from that one seller. So first up, I picked up Resident Evil 4 Collector's Edition. This was a really cool Collector's Edition and made owning a GameCube worthwhile. There was a short time where this was actually exclusive to the GameCube, and as many fans of the Resident Evil franchise are aware, it's one of the best Resident Evil titles ever created. It's also responsible for reinvigorating the franchise after it kind of went a little bit stagnant, probably after Resident Evil 3, and it really did introduce something different, particularly just making Leon Kennedy a kind of a Resident Evil household name really. Collector's Edition comes with the Resident Evil 4 bonus disc, which doesn't actually include any additional written material or documentation. All you get is just this bonus disc which had behind the scenes footage and a brief history of Resident Evil, sort of like a behind the horror type thing. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I watched it way back and I really enjoyed it, so I might watch it again when I have a free moment. And it also came with a copy of the game, which is always important. The Resident Evil 4 game came on 2 discs. And you can see there it's got a really nice clean manual, and the disc, you got disc 1 there and disc 2, which looks exactly the same. But yeah, this is one of the best games ever created, and definitely one of the reasons to own GameCube back in those days. You can pick it up on PlayStation 2 these days, as well as the Wii, and it's been re-released so many times now it's gotten a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, this is the original, and it's not worth as much as it used to be, but still a really nice collector's edition to add to your GameCube collection. Also managed to get a hold of Pokemon Colosseum. This is a really interesting version of Pokemon in that the story mode was pretty simplistic, but it did have feature sort of like a battle mode, which was kind of interesting for the GameCube. This one is complete as well. It comes with a copy of the manual. You can see there it's in really nice shape, and you can see the main protagonist is kind of peeking in between the legendary Pokemon, as well as a game disc, which I think you can see there you got Espeon and Umbreon, so that's kind of cool. And this one was packaged with a 59 block memory card, which you kind of need in order to play it anyway, so Nintendo were quite smart about it, and they always packaged these type of games where they required memory cards with the required memory card included. Of course, on the second-hand market it's a bit hard to find memory cards packaged like that, and this one didn't come with the memory card. I do have a few spare memory cards, so I just popped one in to kind of complete it. But yeah, that's Pokemon Colosseum. Following on from Resident Evil 4, Capcom also released sort of like all the Resident Evil titles, and this is one of them, Resident Evil 0, which is sort of like a prologue to the Resident Evil, or the original Resident Evil anyway. This one, again, comes with the manual, really nice shape, and it also features disc 1 and disc 2. And as I said, it actually is kind of a prequel to the original Resident Evil, and it's been redone specifically for the GameCube. At least it was back when it was first released. I think a lot of you may have probably seen this on sale for the Wii as well. I think they called it Resident Evil Archives or something like that, but it's definitely more rarer on the GameCube compared to the Wii. And if you want to play it in its original format, this is a really good way to explore the Resident Evil franchise before Resident Evil really got started. Following off Resident Evil 0 is the original Resident Evil. This is a remake of the original Resident Evil for the PlayStation 1. And again, this one comes with 2 discs. You can see disc 1 there and disc 2. It also comes with a really nice condition manual, which is always a plus. This game is pretty much what you expect from the first Resident Evil, in that it kept a lot of the same format, but making use of the Nintendo GameCube with its more powerful hardware. It's not too bad. It's good if you haven't played any of the Resident Evil games, particularly Resident Evil 1 when it was first released on PlayStation. But yeah, again, this has been re-released on the Wii, I think, and it's not a bad way to get into the Resident Evil franchise. I mean, you get a lot of people talking about it. We're up to what, Resident Evil 6 now? So if you want to go back to the origins, this is a good way to start. You could always start with 0 and then work your way to Resident Evil and so on. One of the early titles to be released on Nintendo GameCube was Lost Kingdoms. This is kind of a hidden gem. I say hidden gem in that it probably doesn't attract the same kind of crazy prices as some of the other GameCube titles, but it is well known as being a really good title, and part of that reason is the development studio behind Lost Kingdom. Maybe you might recognize the name From Software from their more recent titles, Dark Souls and Demon Souls. So this is one of their more earlier titles, and it was a bit of a sleeper hit. Now that the GameCube's come and gone, a lot of people have been kind of trying to get Lost Kingdoms 1 and its sequel, Lost Kingdoms 2. I managed to get a hold of the first one, and as you can see, it's in relatively good shape. I didn't play Lost Kingdoms when I first had my GameCube growing up, so it's definitely one of those titles I wanted to add to the collection, and so far from what I've played, it's been pretty good. It has aged rather well, and it's definitely something worth going back and having another look at. Don't expect too much from the game, but it is a really polished and well put together title, which is definitely worthy of a place in your GameCube collection. One of the best beat 'em ups released for the Nintendo GameCube is Bloody Roar Primal Fury. This has a sort of niche following in that it's not one of those titles which has survived well over the years, but it was relatively good back in its day, and it's a good button masher if you're not too familiar with the control schemes, and it had its little hook in that you could transform into animals, which was pretty neat as well. You could say it's Bloody Roar 4 in that it's got the successors to Bloody Roar 1, 2 and 3, and it's one of those really odd games that Hudson put out, which you wouldn't really expect from Hudson, you know. When they're well known for producing games like Bomberman, a beat 'em up is definitely not one of those games which you'd think they'd be producing, but they did a really good job with this, and it definitely shows with Bloody Roar Primal Fury. Again, this is not a title that I played a lot of growing up. It was one of the GameCube's earlier releases, so I'll be taking a look back through this one, and I'll let you know what I think once I just get a bit more hands-on time with it. One of the best GameCube titles ever released was Super Smash Bros. Melee, and I managed to get this with the rest of these titles, and this is probably regarded as one of the best Smash Brothers in the series. It's a really well put together game, and the roster and lineup is pretty good. This one here comes with the manual, and you can see it actually comes in this old style case, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it was one of the more early release titles, and for some strange reason, when the GameCube first came to Australia, we got these kind of NTSC cases, which I say is a little bit more ugly than the PAL version, particularly because they kind of clip together like this, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But yeah, it's definitely one of the better games out there, and it's held up relatively well over the years. I mean, it's still attracting some crazy prices on second-hand market. You can see there the original Nintendo seal appears to be a little bit off-center, which is quite funny. So yeah, in recent times it's been kind of going for some high prices, probably due to the upcoming Super Smash Bros. Coming out soon on the 3DS and Wii U. That some people have been going back to revisit Melee, and yeah, Smash Bros. Melee is definitely one of the best titles. I played a lot of this growing up, and it was one of my favourite games to play. I used to own a Platinum version, Player's Choice, sorry, as they usually call them in Australia, so it was good to get the original release with the black label cover slip, which is always pretty neat. But yeah, I've played it again recently, and it's held up rather well, considering its age, and it's definitely one of those titles which I'd highly recommend adding to your GameCube collection. Next up is Soul Calibur 2. This is one of those titles where Namco released it on multi-platforms, but offered something different and unique for each of the platforms that it was available on. For the GameCube, players were able to play as Link for the first time in a beat 'em up, which was kinda neat, and is one of the more better beat 'em ups produced for the Nintendo GameCube. This one's in really nice shape as well. You've got the game disc, you can see there, it's in relatively decent shape, and the manual again is in really nice condition, so I was really happy to get a hold of this one. You can even see on the back there the cover slip is unique to the GameCube. You can see there's a Link in the backdrop, as well as his portrait down there as well, and it plays well. I mean, it's one of those games you can get really good at, or you can just button mash your way all the way from start to finish and you'll still have a great time with it. Soul Calibur 2, again, I had this game growing up and I really loved it, so it was good to get this and add it back to my collection. I'd have to say this is one of the most underrated Mario games ever released. This is Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube. It was a really great game, and it was one of those titles that just didn't get its due credit considering how much hype there was surrounding Super Mario 64 back in its day. This was seen as its successor, and it was good, but not, I don't know, maybe a lot of people were expecting too much after the success of 64, but I thought this was a really great game and I enjoyed it. It was a little bit different in that Mario had to go around cleaning up all this dirty painted mess, and it had some really unique mechanics in it, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing this game. I don't think I ever finished it though, so it will be something I have to go back and try again. And this also saw a player's choice release. This Black Label release was really hard to get a hold of before. I'm not too sure how it fares now. Most of the ones that you'll see out there tend to be player's choice, but yeah, I always like the Black Label, so I'm really happy to get this one added to the collection as well. Okay, so lastly, this is a really popular game for a lot of fans, is The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, and this one is the limited edition. You can see it has that sticker stuck onto the box, includes a bonus disc featuring 2 extra games, and those 2 games are Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time Master Quest. Now, in Australia, Master Quest was only available through this game release at the time, so it was one of those good reasons to go and pick it up. You can see there, that's the Ocarina of Time, and over here is the regular Wind Waker game disc. Sorry, that one actually also includes Master Quest on it. This one here is complete again, comes with the manual in really good shape, and it is one of the most better Zelda games out there. It was really controversial though when it first came out, because it presented Zelda in a way that fans hadn't actually seen before. You know, they introduced him with that kind of chibi style and really cutesy design, and there was a bit of an uproar, but once the game got released and people had a chance to play it, they quickly changed their tune, and it has kind of grown into one of the best Zelda games ever released for any platform really. The Wii U recently released The Wind Waker in HD, which kind of has seen the price of this stabilize, I'd say. Hasn't 100% dropped in value or anything, but it used to be a lot more sought after before the HD remake came out, but this version in a really nice shape is still really desirable and worth adding to your collection. And yeah, that kind of wraps up my GameCube pickup from that one particular seller. Again, all these titles set me back approximately $20, which is again a steal for what these titles are and how much they go on the second-hand market. Just a quick recap of all my recent pickups. I managed to get a hold of Resident Evil 4 the Collector's Edition, Pokemon Colosseum, Resident Evil 0, the original Resident Evil, Lost Kingdoms, Bloody Roar Primal Fury, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Soul Calibur 2, Super Mario Sunshine, and lastly The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker Limited Edition. Let me know what titles you own or what you'd like to add to your collection, and as always, thank you so much for watching and subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate all the recent subscribers and feedback that I've received, and I hope you've been enjoying my videos so far. I will catch you next time. Bye.